everyone, today I'm going to be going over everything that I read in May. I'm going to start with the books from my physical TBR that I read and end with the books that I don't physically own. I'm also going to start with the books that I am planning on unhauling and ending with some of my favorites. So the first book that I have that I will be unhauling is Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. This was unfortunately a DNF for me. I just couldn't really get into the story. I thought the premise was really great, and that was about it. The story itself just didn't grip me. I read the first 3 chapters and decided to drop it. Just to give you guys like an overview of what this book is about, it says, as a professional trainer, Tamra was an elite keyhawk rider. Then a tragic accident with a student on the track shattered her confidence, damaged her career, and left her nearly broke. Now Tamra needs the prize money to prevent a local temple from taking her daughter away from her, and that means she must once again find a winning keyhawk and a rider willing to trust her. So it sounds pretty cool, but I just couldn't get into it, so this was a DNF and it will be unhauled. Next, I have The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, and this one I couldn't even get past the first few pages, so it was another DNF. I think I got about 15 pages in before I decided to drop it. So this book follows the Earth against aliens, we have to go battle them because they're bad and things happen kind of premise. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into it, so I'm going to be unhauling this as well. Next, I have The Blacksmith Queen by G.A. Aiken. This one was a huge disappointment because not only the premise of the book, but really everything that was happening in the book was like right up my alley. I was really enjoying everything that the book was about, but the writing just killed it for me. I think I read about 5 or 6 chapters, but I just could not get over the writing style. It just was not something that I enjoyed. This is one of the like main books that I can say like this is an example of telling, not showing. It was all telling, and I could not get into it, and I'm really sad because this could have been a great book, but I will be unhauling this one as well. The next book is a DNF, but I won't be unhauling it, and I'll explain that once I get to the other book that is in the series. So this book is Savages by Dawn Winslow. There's a prequel book called Kings of Cool that I read and actually really enjoyed. This book has a movie that's based on it that is under the same title, and I love the movie so much. I was hoping I'd really like the book, and just the first chapter of this, I just couldn't get past it. I don't like explicit sex in books. And so when the very first chapter is all explicit sex, I just had to put it down. So that's really unfortunate, but I will be keeping it because maybe someday I can just skip the first chapter and read the rest of the book. But right now it's just too fresh in my mind. But yeah, the prequel I really, really enjoyed. So, and the movie I really enjoyed. So hopefully someday I can get back to this. The next book I have is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is really, I think it's 5 stories in one. It's 4 or 5 stories in one single book. This one was really hard for me to rate because I really enjoyed the first story. I gave that one a 5-star. The second story in this I gave probably a 4-star. And then the third and fourth I absolutely hated. So this book follows the story of Arthur and Sword in the Stone and Merlin and all of that, and then continues on to the rest of his life where he has the Round Table and he marries Guinevere, etc., etc. And the the stories that focused on Guinevere and Lancelot, I hated. I just wanted it to be over. I was hoping it would have more about Arthur in it, but he barely makes appearances, and Merlin is like nowhere to be found in those chapters either. And it was just like, seriously, it was like 1-star material. I hated those ones. And then like, I think it was the very end of the 4th book. I think this is 4 books. I think the very, very, very end of the 4th book, it goes back to Arthur and Merlin shows up again. And I liked that part. It was tragic. But I think I'm going to settle on a 3-star for this. And because of how much I hated those two books, I think I'm going to unhaul this and see if I can just get the first story in its own book. But I don't know if that exists, so we shall see. Next, I have one that has been on my shelves for a very long time, and that is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is a Seven Swans retelling, and I really loved the writing. I really loved the characters in this. I thought this book was great. It's quite long, just under 600 pages, so that's pretty long for me. I don't read very many super long books. Unfortunately, I did not like a lot of things that happened in the end of this book. And it is a series, and so I could continue reading the rest in the series, but I just feel like I really loved what I loved and I hated what I hated, and this is one that I'm on the fence whether I'm going to keep it or not. I think I ended up giving this a 4-star, so it might be unhauled and it might stay in my collection. And last for my disappointments, I have The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy. I'm really sad about this because I love her other duology, Bonecryer's Moon and Bonecryer's Dawn. I really like it. People say that like Fourth Wing is their like guilty pleasure read and it's like not that good, but they love it. A lot of people don't think it's good, but I absolutely love it series. And so I was really excited about this one because I do love fairy tale retellings, and this, I read that a lot of people were like, oh, I hated it because it was so many fairy retellings put into the same book, and I was like, that sounds great, that sounds amazing, I want to read that. Unfortunately, I did not like this. It had a couple tropes that I don't really appreciate, where like one of them is I like friends to lovers, but not when the friend is already in love with someone and then they decide they're not in love with that person, they're in love with the friend, if that makes sense. Like, that just bothers me. I want people to be able to just be friends sometimes, you know? Like, do we have to have every boy-girl relationship in books turn into romance? I hope not, because that's boring. I did like the fairy tale retellings, but they all seemed very short and abrupt. It was like, you meet this person, you figure out how they're associated with whatever fairy tale, and then they run away from that person, and then they meet another person, and da-da-da-da-da-da. There were some other things that I didn't really care for. The main character has scoliosis, which is good for like rep. I appreciate that. But how often it was mentioned, and not in a like, let's talk about like the pain and let's talk about the recovery. It was just like, oh, my S curve and my S spine and my crooked spine and my, you know, S curve was used so much. My S curve, my S curve, my S spine. And it was just like, but what about it? Like, what's going on? What happened? How is it hurting you? And so that was kind of like, it felt like I'm going to have rep, but instead of actually talking about how this affects the person, I'm just going to tell you, oh, there's rep in this, and there's rep. It has representation in it. And that really bothered me. So anyways, I'm going to stop ranting about this because I could go on and on. But this one, unfortunately, I will be unhauling, even though I was really excited for this and I love this cover. I'm not one of the girlies that keeps a book just for the cover. So now we're going to get into the books that I read off of my TBR shelves that I actually enjoyed. So the first one I already mentioned, Kings of Cool. This is the prequel to Savages, and I did really enjoy this. It's so weird because I loved the writing in this, and although it did have some mature themes, it didn't go as hard as Savages did in the first chapter of Savages, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is just talking about how the main characters met each other and how they get into the business that they are in. And I just really enjoyed that. So this one I really liked, and I'm keeping it on my shelves. Savages I'm also keeping on my shelves, but I didn't really care for it. Next, I have Hummingbird Salamander by Jeff Vandermeer. I recently read the Southern Reach trilogy and really enjoyed it, and so I decided I wanted to pick up some more of his books. So I picked up this one, and I really did enjoy this one. I think I ended up giving it like a 4 or 4.5 stars. I didn't love it as much as the Southern Reach, but it was still very good. It had a lot of the vibes that I liked. It had a main character who was having some internal conversations that I really appreciate in books, with just anxiety and like kind of paranoid thinking and stuff like that. I enjoy that in books. Overall, I really did enjoy this. This is going to be one of those books that if it stays really fresh in my, oh my gosh, I love this and I can't stop thinking about it, it will stay in my collection. Otherwise, it could be on hold. Next, I have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This was a gift to me from my friend Erin, and I really loved this book. This is the sci-fi that I just completely binge read. Like, it's so, so, so good, and I want to reread it already, and this is my first Blake Crouch, so I will definitely be picking up more. This deals with alternate dimensions and Schrodinger's cat thought experiment. I just loved the way that that was incorporated into the story. Again, it was just really, really good, and I will be keeping this one 5 stars. Next, we have The Queen of Blood. This was in my Try a Chapter vlog, and I really enjoyed it, so I picked it up rather quickly. I read this first one. It follows this world where the spirits of earth, water, fire, air, and ice are all like actual small beings, well, all different sizes of beings. And basically the queens of each realm make a contract with the spirits to basically protect the people of their area. And in this, we are following the women who are trying to be, well, girls, because they are young, the girls who are trying to become the next queen, and they're training with the spirits and such. And it was really good. I really, really enjoyed this one. So much so that I read the next 2 books in the trilogy from my library and loved them and bought them. So I now own the entire trilogy. I really enjoyed it. This is the reason why I picked up that other book by Sarah Beth Durst, and unfortunately didn't like it. But these will definitely be staying on my shelves. So the last book on my physical TBR that I read in May was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. There is a movie adaptation of this by Studio Ghibli. The book and the movie do have a lot of similarities, but they also have a lot of differences. So if you love the movie, I do recommend reading the book as well, because you kind of get a different story. But this book follows Sophie. She is one of 3 daughters in a family where the father has passed away. Her 2 sisters get sent away to do different jobs, and she stays at the hat shop to take over. She gets cursed by a witch and then has to go and find somebody to help her break this curse. And it's very exciting. It's very fantasy. I really, really enjoyed this. So much so that I got the second book from my library and I started reading that. And that's going to bring us into the books that I read that I don't physically own. So the second book in the trilogy is Castle in the Air. And unfortunately, I didn't like this one. First, because you don't meet any of the characters from the first book until over halfway through the second book. Like, it follows completely new characters. You don't really see how it could like match up or even be in the same world as the first book. And the second thing that really bothered me about that book was the fat shaming. There was a lot of fat shaming in that book, which really didn't make sense to me, because in the first book, it's all talking about how appearance shouldn't matter and you shouldn't just fall in love with someone because of their appearance. Which gets me into the third reason why I didn't really like it, and that's because the main character that we follow literally falls in love with a girl because she's beautiful, and then the whole rest of the story is him trying to find this beautiful girl so that he can marry her, and he literally knows nothing else about her, and I hate that. So, second book was a bust for me. I'm hoping the third book is better. I'm planning on reading it this month. We shall see. So the rest of the books that I read, I'm just going to read out of my reading journal and maybe give you like a brief synopsis of each one. So the first one was a nonfiction. It's A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. I gave this a 5 star. I read it for Books and Lala's Buzzwordathon, and that is one that I am planning on picking up physically. Next, I have The Highwayman of Tanglewood by Marisha Lynn McLuey, and this one I DNF'd after 25 pages. After that, I have Kingdom of Needle and Bone by Mira Grant. This is the first Mira Grant that I have given less than a 4 star. I gave it a 3 star, and the reason for that is because I felt like the themes in this book were very heavy-handed, and I would have liked it if it was less heavy-handed. Next, I have The Night Hunt by Alexandra Christo. I DNF'd this at 25%. I really tried to like this one. I thought it sounded really cool and I just could not finish it. After that, I have The Hidden by Melanie Golding. This is a thriller mystery with Selkies, and I really like the Selkie myth, and so I quite literally picked this up because I wanted to read a book about Selkie, and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.25 star and I am planning on picking it up. And that is it for all of the books that I read in the month of May. What did you guys read? What were some of your favorites and some of your disappointments? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.